Hi, this is Sean Perrin, and you're listening to the fifth episode of the Clarinet.com podcast. We made it through the first month. We've got another great month lined up here with some really amazing guests. I'm still working out the kinks with some of the interview schedules, so I'm not going to announce them just yet, but I assure you we've got some great people to talk to again. Today we have Laurie Freedman, who is a Montreal-based performer, composer, collaborator, teacher, writer, and improviser. In her own words, she feels that in a way she's a musician of many hats, but in the interview, actually, she sort of says she agrees that she may just be under one big hat, and that hat just happens to be her life. She has been called a musical revolutionary in the front ranks of the avant garde and the best thing that ever happened to new music. She's about to embark on the second city of her Virtuosity of Excess tour, which she'll be bringing to Calgary, actually. I'm really excited to have the chance to meet her in person while she's here. And she shares her thoughts on the tour, musical performance, teaching, improvising, and much, much more in this really fantastic interview. Now, we also discussed the aesthetics of this style of music, and it really is something that has to be heard to be explained. As such, I wanted to play a short clip before we start, but I just want to warn you that it may not be quite what you're expecting if you're not familiar with this kind of music. However, I strongly urge you to stick around for the rest of the interview, no matter what you think, no matter what your gut reaction is. As she says herself, if people feel any sort of emotion or even if it's revulsion to this kind of music, that's really fantastic, and that's the point. Furthermore, she'd love to sit down with people of this kind to talk and discuss music really the most. So please give it your free thought, and this is an improvisation that she is featuring on her website about the Virtuosity of Excess tour. So there's the clip. I just want you to keep that in mind as we discuss some of the improvisation and the visceral reactions people might have to this type of music, and just sort of keep that in your back pocket as we discuss this stuff. So hope you enjoyed the interview, and without further ado, here's Laurie Friedman. Hi, Laurie, and welcome to the Clarinet.com podcast. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today on the show.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for calling.
So you're a bass clarinet legend, and none other than John Corigliano himself has referred to you as the best thing that ever happened to new music. That's a pretty incredible compliment. How did you get where you are today? What was it that ignited your passion for new music?
Some would say I came by it honestly. I I was brought up in a musical family. Both my parents being practicing musicians. My father was a composer, and before that, an instrumentalist. He played oboe and English horn in the Toronto Symphony for 24 years. My mother was a vocalist and is still teaching at almost 90 years old at the University of Toronto. She teaches voice full time there, um, and has had a roster of, I'd say, pretty great singers, um, international singers, come by her studio over the years. So that doesn't necessarily make me come by it honestly. Let's see. I did play classical music. I played a lot of classical music in my training years. Um, I did, however, find that by the time I was at university, probably before that, but at university, I was befriending a lot of composers who were studying composition and also outside of the university system entirely, people who were into more creative ways of thinking about music. And I found this kind of a savior to get me through the final throes of the academic institution.
So when you say more creative avenues of music, is that implying that you feel that new music is somehow more creative than older music, or just the Michael Norsworthy actually mentioned something similar. He said when he was in school, he really felt the burden of all the past performances on the classical repertoire, and the new music he was able to do his own thing with.
Well, I think there's a lot of truth in that because we as classically trained Western classical musicians, we have a kind of a dogma about this is how you do it, when we actually don't have a lot of authority on that because there were no recordings made in those days. I mean, there's a lot of musicological exploration on how you actually did it then. I'm not here to refute that at all or to say in any way that older music is less creative than new music. What I was simply answering to was in my own um, practical experience as a clarinet player that I found working with composers gave me a path, a chemin, what's that? A way into thinking more creatively, more about the actual music itself, and rather than what we were training to do was be these great clarinetists.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me actually, and it would be truly sad actually to not tap that resource of the living composer and always sort of look back. So it's great that the people are on the forefront of that. So some of the music itself, for those who maybe haven't had a chance to listen yet, I checked out some of the pieces, and the one you've been using for the main tour video. Can you explain what's going on in that piece a little bit? For
Is that the one with the contrabass?
yeah, it's contrabass, and there's a little bit of singing through the instrument and some really primal sort of sounds.
Well, that particular clip is one of my improvisations that I
Hmm.
did back in September, opening for a great little band here in Montreal. And half of my life is really, a third of my life is spent, my career is spent improvising, either solo or in group settings. And in this situation, it was a solo set of whatever duration. My solo sets can range between, a 10-minute piece, a 15-minute piece, or a whole, 40 minutes that has several pieces. And I actually didn't know what I was going to do before I started playing. Uh, in terms of length, I wanted to let that, as well as everything, be up to the moment. Sometimes I feel that I want to structure the set more, and then there are various parameters that I will give myself. But in this case, I really just wanted to come out there with a contrabass clarinet and say, "Here it is, this moment, me now, the music I'm uncovering." And so I started.
So you said you feel like you're uncovering the music, like almost as if you're finding it from
Yeah,
yourself or from.
yeah, it feels a little like I've used this analogy many times before. A little bit like an anteater might be.
Mhm.
I'm kind of following my nose, and it goes in this direction and that direction. But one thing I do aspire to, and I don't think that I can turn it off actually, is that I'm very aware of the passage of time, and um, I need to know where I've come from at every step of the way. I don't necessarily know where I'm going, but where I've come from gives me the impulse and the gesture for what's to come. And I say gesture in a very reverent way. I feel that my improvisations are largely based on gesture, and gesture by gesture I mean um, impulses.
So do you feel then you remind me of a quote of a guitarist who said something like if he had a guitar with him at that moment he could sit down and catch a tune because they're always flying in the air and they're just meant to be sort of discovered. Do you feel like your a conduit for the music, or you're realizing the music, or that it's somehow spiritual?
I don't really know what spiritual means anyway, but in terms of what I have to say musically, I don't know. I don't know how to talk about spirituality, and certainly not my own spirituality. Maybe that's a private thing, in fact.
Hmm.
Maybe that's one thing I keep to myself. It's a very strange state of being in improvisation, as it is in interpretation, too. I feel that I have a part of me is just hanging there suspended, listening, watching, feeling. Part of me is playing, feeling where am I going. A part of me is recording it. There's a whole bunch of things going on that are very difficult to describe because there's nothing else like this.
Hmm.
I can't I can't describe to people who have never entered this world what it's like from my perspective. I think that the best description would be, please come, please witness this, please experience this with me.
Hmm.
And there will probably be a billion questions answered right there. I hope so. I hope that there would be a lot of questions.
Well, and people are going to have the chance to do that. You're coming to Calgary. Your next show is in New York, on February 4th. Um, this is, I think, a 10-city tour. You're seeing, just grabbing the poster here on my desk. You got
Yeah.
Brooklyn, and Toronto. You've already been there, but Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Vancouver, Edmonton, Montreal, and Brandon. So all these people in all these places are going to have the chance to come out, um, and hear that. But for a lot of them, I think, not to play devil's advocate here, but this type of music is going to be a little bit, not something they've heard before, not something they're expecting. But a lot of people are expecting to be emotionally moved or to relax at a concert. How would you entice those people and wake their ear up to being able to enjoy this type of music and interaction?
Well, let me just stop you there because I realize um, people expecting to be emotionally moved. That's great, actually. My aspiration is to move people, to touch people, to change people, so that when people have listened to anything I'm playing, that they'll leave kind of going, huh, that's all. Just, huh. You know, um, I don't, actually, I would love it if people go, wow, or, ugh. And those people who hate it or who have a very negative, let's say, emotion around it, I'd love to talk to them and not at all defensively. I want to know what is it, and I want what I want there. It's already touched them, and there, my job is done.
Hmm.
Negative emotion is not a negative thing in and of itself. If you can figure out why it it made you feel that way, um, that's great. That's really, really great. I mean, I was thinking about this question when you sent me the list of questionnaire. Um,
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you that. Okay, you're asking the question. You're playing the devil's advocate here, and I would love for you, Sean.
Hmm.
Pretend you're one of those people. You've been to these kinds of shows. You've had that emotion where you're kind of like, ugh.
Yeah, it reminds me of a John Cage quote. He said something like, "I've never heard a sound I didn't like,"
Yeah.
and I think actually Michael Norsworthy said that the other day. And he sort of mentioned he wasn't sure that felt like a very human reaction to, well, we started discussing the philosophy of John Cage at that point. But yeah, I mean, I sort of agree. I mean, if someone is really, if someone can experience a love emotion or happiness or playfulness or anything like that from music, surely some sort of in some sense, almost like a repulsion or immediate lack of understanding that puts them on edge is it's in some ways equally important.
I find it extremely important. Any emotion is like a jackpot for knowledge.
There's an Ervo Part quote too. As you know, he is very focused on extremely minimal, like languid music. But he said something which I thought was rather interesting from him. He said, if music can make people feel, and this isn't exact, but if it can make people feel this sense of like he's very spiritual and sort of a sense of well-being in that way, it can literally kill if the sound is loud enough and focused enough. And he said that that sort of range of emotion was he wants to stay on the the more calm side of that, but you're trying to sort of wake people up and get them off their chair and
Well, um, I figure if people are there in the hall with me, they're already um, interested in change.
mm-hmm.
I am not Arvo Part. And I do, yes, I do enjoy the unknown. I do thrive on really seeking solutions in the moment. I'm a performer.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the reaction to this type of music would be if you, and maybe you've tried this, I'm sorry, I don't know. Um, let's say went in Montreal there and played in a metro station for the public. What do you think they would say or do?
Well, I probably wouldn't do that just because it's not, that's kind of like thrusting it.
Mm-hmm.
Here, change, you know?
But I
um,
think it would elicit some interest and excitement. I mean,
oh, sure.
especially with children, they're very open to this kind of thing.
Children are the very, very best because they haven't had any kind of, I'm not going to use, yes, I am going to use the word brainwashing to say this is good and this is bad.
Yeah.
They just react, right?
Yeah, totally.
And
No,
actually, their reaction is a kind of proaction, you know,
yeah.
and it's brilliant. If you could just stick a contrabass clarinet in their mouth, then wow, look out, you
Well, I
know.
was thinking so much even about music education. And when a child first starts to play, for example, a clarinet, we spend so much time. They make a sound. Oh no, no, that's not the right sound. Make this sound. They make another sound. Oh no, that's not the right sound. You're focusing the tone. You want a darker sound. Do you feel like in education we should almost just let them explore those tones that they first start with?
You know, I've never had a young child as a student,
Oh, really?
but judging from my older children who I teach, including
Mm-hmm.
68-year-old woman, um, I encourage all sounds.
Yeah.
All sounds. I feel as though I believe that there again, it's a jackpot. Any sound somebody makes, music to me is an organization of sounds in time, in a passage of time. Even in improvisation, you're organizing the sounds that are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Whether a student is improvising for me or playing something written in front of me, and there's a sound, a questionable sound, I'll like jump on it and go,
Yeah.
wow, and wow, positive. What was that? And if it's something, you know, if they're playing Mozart, which mostly students to play won't come to me for Mozart.
Yeah.
um, there's a sound that was wrong. Like, let's go in there. What was wrong about it? You know, how did you do it? And we get way inside the sound, and sooner or later, they're either not capable of doing it anymore, or they're just totally using it in a musical context,
Yeah.
and it's fantastic.
It's funny because I do teach a lot of younger kids here, and I find that we start off so many times kind of beating the squeaks and squawks out of them, And then later, a couple years down the road, they have to play in the altissimo register and more difficult repertoire. And they're literally afraid to make those sounds. And I think it's so sad.
Yeah. The easiest, fastest way in there is go back to the squeaks.
Yeah, get back there, get squeaking again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've had numerous works composed for you. You're a composer yourself, and of course you're a skilled improviser. Um, do you feel that you put on different hats for each activity musically, or is everything kind of one and the same for you?
I would say that it's certainly not one and the same, but I would say that I am one and the same. It's it all of my activities that involve music, even listening to music, writing about music, talking to you about music, wandering in a park thinking about music. All of these activities are under one hat.
Hmm. So it's a big hat.
It's a big hat. Yeah, I can't, well, it's my life.
Yeah.
I don't really do anything else. What did I say? I was talking to somebody recently. Oh yeah, I was working with a composer who wrote me a big bass clarinet solo to introduce an ensemble work. Like it's the beginning, it's the introduction of a sextet,
Hmm.
and it's manic. It's 12 pages of manic writing, and um, and so I said, let's get together and let's go over this together, because I want you to understand that this kind of material it looks fantastic, and I would love to take this on as some of my solo repertoire. Never mind the sextet that it precedes. But this is going to take me like the same amount of study that Fernie Howe takes me. Look at
Hmm.
this, and let's look at it together and just see what we can do about it. And after an hour and a half or 2 hours with her, she was just going like, wow. I need to go back to the drawing board, but I can't go back to the drawing board. I want to keep my stuff. I wanted her to keep the stuff because it's really great. But we needed to figure out a practical solution to that. And in this period of time, I was just realizing and said to her, it's all I do. I just work.
Yeah.
It's kind of boring. And sooner or later, it's gonna change. Yes, I keep saying it's gonna change. I'm gonna do other things. But you know what the thing is that I don't feel like I just work. It feels like making supper is as much about constructing a program and preparing psychically for the Virtuosity of Excess tour. Everything kind of feeds into everything. I know it
Hmm.
sounds kind of, well, maybe that's spiritual, but I don't really know how to separate all of my activities.
So do you feel then that your work is almost play in a sense for you, or is it kind of both cycling into one another? Like there's got to be sort of a creative um, lightheartedness to some of this stuff.
Well, it's all, oh no, I shouldn't say it's all lighthearted, but it is all play.
Hmm.
And play is, well, more often than not conceived as lighthearted. And it's true, there's a huge amount of my life that is lighthearted. And there's a huge amount of my life that is very deeply engaged.
Hmm.
Can I say deeply engaged in lighthearted? Lighthearted?
Yeah, no, I didn't mean that in any way a derogatory term. I
No.
just meant that in able to sort of explore these things with these composers. And that was really my next question is what's it like interpreting music knowing that it was written with specifically you in mind? Very few people get the chance to experience that. And I'm wondering if it brings back sort of the same weight that people feel when interpreting older music as far as the versions that have been done before them and sort of adhering to the I hate to say this, but dogma of the age maybe. Um, or is it kind of freeing because you can interact and be creative with the composer at the same time?
Well, there's various ways of working with composers.
Mm-hmm.
My preferred way is along the way so that we are in collaboration, in true collaboration. One of the pieces on the program by Paul Steenhuisen Library on Fire was conceived and processed exactly like that. I sent him a bunch of improvisations. He sent me a bunch of drawings, um, and we just unraveled this piece together, really together. We Skyped it, we recorded it, we tried all kinds of things. And like I was sitting there in the summertime playing these things, trying to play back my improvisations. That was wild. That was really strange. And his transcriptions of the sounds that I was making. It was very, very difficult to learn how to read what I improvise.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it was a fascinating process. Other processes with composers is they give me the piece, but they've already, yes, they've already heard what I do. That's why they've decided to write for me.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a wonderful, wonderful privilege to have that weight of getting it right and what is right, of having the opportunity to discuss with them, is it, you've written this, and this is what that sounds like. But if I do this like this, what do you think of that? Sometimes a composer will say, oh, yes. But at other times, a composer will say, well, no. And they'll go really into detail about why not. And it's fascinating.
So it sounds like the improvisational process then is almost sort of blending with the composer's energies. How does it work then when you write yourself, or do you feel like you're transcribing improvisations, or working the other way, or?
I have done that. I have transcribed my improvisations and then developed them from there. A lot of full-time composers, people who only write music, don't play also, um, have suggested to me, do not write with the clarinet in front of you. But I don't really know how to do that off the top. And I would suggest that, or propose that, the idea that composers are improvisers too.
Hmm.
They are improvising in their mind perhaps before they set something on paper. But
I
even,
find that very hard to understand. Um, they should not have the clarinet with you when you improvise. That seem, or sorry, when you compose. That would seem
well,
backwards to me.
I understand it to a point,
Hmm.
because what happens is that then I just like say okay, I improvise, I transcribe something that I liked from that, I write it down, and then what? Rather than look at it and imagine where to move it in time, where
Hmm.
to develop it to. If I take the clarinet and just work it like that, it's really easy. It's really easy to improvise on an idea. I hope I'm I'm not contradicting myself. Is it easy to improvise on an idea, on my own ideas? Well, that's what I'm doing though when I'm composing. Is I'm improvising on ideas, and that's what I'm doing when I'm improvising.
Yeah, it's almost like a
I'm
circle. Which
composing.
came first?
I'm composing, and that was what my point. Please remember your question on this, but is that I think there is a very, very vague line between composition and improvisation. I was reading last night, what is the difference? And somebody wrote, well, composition is written and improvisation is not.
Hmm.
But I would say for the most part of the world, except for maybe Western classical music, most music is not written down.
Yeah,
Compositions are not written down. It's a very small part of the world who write their music.
I find what you're saying interesting because for me, what I've been kind of doing is sort of in jazz or even just within classical pieces, but I'm sort of held in by a key signature or a tonality or it can be loosely based on that, but the kind of work you're doing, it seems to start more without those things in mind. So not I'm not implying they're not you're not thinking about them, but I'm just wondering what you are thinking about to come up with those sounds and if you're not based on a key signature or being defined by it.
Without sounding flaky,
Hmm.
I think the word is thinking. I'm actually not thinking the way one has to think about a tonality, a key, or a rhythm.
So you're thinking in a different way, or you're literally trying not to think?
Uh,
Like, are you trying to just sort of have a nice blank state, almost in a meditative way, or?
um, again, it's very, very difficult to describe the state of mind I get into when I'm improvising. But I would say that I'm trying to cut out thoughts. I'm trying to cut out conscious thinking because very quickly I will censor myself.
Oh
And,
yeah, I can definitely relate to that. There's
and
times where I was about to play something and I'm like, ooh, might be a wrong note. What are people gonna say?
well,
And
exactly. So that's not fun, and that's
no.
not very interesting to listen to. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I do practice improvising at home, and mostly that work is about concentration. I've just finished saying you don't. I try not to think,
No,
but
I can understand that though. You're sort of, because thoughts can be intrusive. Um, and if you're kind of trying to channel only the thoughts that you want and to not judge those thoughts and let them be, that makes sense to me.
what I was trying to say about I'm trying not to think, what I am doing, let's put it in a positive light, is that I'm listening.
Hmm.
And when you're listening, you can't be. Okay, this is a big, big statement here. If one, if I am listening really deeply, I'm not thinking. I'm listening. That's all. I'm just listening. The fact that I've got a clarinet in my mouth, or I'm singing, or both, is doesn't denote the fact that I'm thinking. I'm listening, not thinking.
Yeah,
Doesn't deny the fact that I'm listening.
you're just listening to yourself, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's so interesting. So you've been playing on many recordings. How does this kind of music um, work in the studio? Can you give some insight into your studio career and maybe share a memorable moment or realization or?
I thought about this question also, Sean, because the unfortunate truth of the matter is I actually don't like the studio.
Mm,
I,
60 records later.
you know, well, most of those records are live recordings.
Yeah.
And I feel that recordings are good for one thing,
Hmm.
and that is for an archival document. Yeah, great if I can sell a couple off stage, yay. We don't make our living off the sales, even if we print 1,000 and sell them.
Yeah.
It's not like the rock industry. This is not really it's not market driven.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got tons of recordings, but most of them were not done in a studio. Some of my solo, like the recent one, was done in a studio, and I don't have any fond memories of it.
Really.
Because I actually don't like the studio. I don't like microphones in front of me. I don't like the the whole thing bugs me about a studio.
Well, in some ways that makes sense because for someone who's trying to improvise and share something in the moment and make the time special, laying that down and setting it in stone almost might be kind of counterintuitive. Is
Well,
it?
that's what you say. That's what your last statement, setting in stone. And I would say, even with repertoire, written music that is set in stone, every time I play the Fernie Howe or the Barrett or any of this music that I'm playing on the Excess tour or anywhere in my repertoire, I try always to find something new in it. And that will always mean that it will be different, even tiny things, sometimes large things. And sometimes I really mess up because I'm going for something. I don't know if I can do it. but I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to go for it. And yeah, that's great in a studio because you just erase, But even in a studio, that's maybe even harder to do is to capture that feeling, that essence of performance, a live performance, where some things are not going to be 1,000% correct, and but you've got the energy behind it that will make the piece work if you can. The studio, um, I still try to go for that. I still try to play as though I'm performing for an audience,
Mm-hmm.
not for those microphones in a dead room with nobody. you
Yeah,
know, One of my first solo albums, I did invite an audience just so that I had somebody to play to.
that's fascinating.
Mm. And at the end of this tour, I am planning on going into a studio, one last filming of the program, The Virtuosity of Excess. And I will invite an audience from Quebec to come into the studio. So just so that it's a bit more realistic. It is not a studio recording, except yes, that was the environment.
That's so interesting to me. You've done some recordings though that have a lot of layered um, clarinet sounds in them. That's something that obviously is a little harder to do live. You don't feel that kind of expands the palette? It still feels limiting?
That's the thing that recording is great for,
Mm.
in fact. And the one album that you maybe are referring to is an album called Three.
Yes.
Yeah, that was 3 evenings of live performances, three different trios that I had in Montreal at the time. We went into a bar and recorded for 3 nights. Glasses clinking, etc. All that is in there. And quite frankly, the recording, as great as it was, Bernard Grenon was a great engineer. You can't cut out a lot of those sounds. It's just impossible. And I didn't want to in the end. But it did change the listening quality of the music for me. And I didn't know what to do with that.
I
And
liked it. I
so I went and so I thought, okay, this is a recording. I'm not I'm not denying that. This is going to be a recording. Let's use the techniques involved in a recording studio. Let's go to crazy in this. And yes, so we did. I got the genius, Michel F. Côté from Montreal, um, to just go crazy on looping and echoing and all kinds of effects that I wouldn't have any idea how to do myself in a studio, and certainly not live. I have no interest in doing that live.
mm-hmm.
It was exactly that was an example of using the studio for what it's great for.
So that recording then was recorded live and then sort of post produced to what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. So let's dive right in and talk about your tour. You're going to 10 cities, and your website says you're playing a spectacle of solo compositions for bass clarinet and contrabass clarinet. The tour is called The Virtuosity of Excess. This sure sounds like a very unique thing to do, and it's something that no clarinet player should really miss. What more could you add to this exciting description?
Well, maybe no clarinet player should miss, but I would encourage also all kinds of musicians to come, and even non-musicians, because I feel that this is, yes, a spectacle. In French, we say spectacle. It's a performance of well, it's like an exploration. It is a voyage exploring the limits and thresholds of all kinds of things, including the clarinet, the bass clarinet and the contrabass clarinet, but also our own notions of what is music, what is sound, what is time, what is energy.
So, yeah, I think the contrabass clarinet especially, that's a very unique instrument to take around on tour. Um, that might almost be perceived as excessive to some people, so much to carry. But do you want to define your use of the word excess as it pertains to this tour?
The definition of excess, huh? I've played a lot with that word because sometimes I get sick of my mind and thinking about, wow, that excess, beauty of excess. There's so much beauty in excess. Then I started playing with the word, wow, there's so much excess. There's so many things. We have exuberance, excitement, exhilarating, extra. X is like uh, a preface that is so profound and fecund that it got me excited. Not just the prefix, the music of the Virtuosity of Excess. This Excess tour is exceptional. Well, there we go again. It's it's there. It's a combination of compositions that one would rarely, if ever, imagine hearing on stage.
What do you think makes it such an enticing instrument for this kind of music?
It's a very good question because I think on the one hand I would say that the clarinet also has an extraordinary palette of sounds, or one should say a clarinetist might have
Hmm.
a palette of sounds, accessible to them.
Accessible.
Accessible, yeah. I think the bass clarinet is, I can't even say is that much more than the clarinet, or the contrabass is even that much more than the bass clarinet. But they're extremely rich in sound possibilities.
Hmm.
What is what the exploration, the development, what the work is here, what the play is here, is refining those sounds, exploring those sounds, discovering new sounds, and learning how to control them, getting these crazy sounds. Yes, you say animalistic, and making them part of your vocabulary so that you actually can say something with them and not just go, whoa, this is what a contrabass clarinet can do. You know? But actually make some music with them. And the composers, and as I improvise, we are all working towards using that vocabulary not just as a show, not just as virtuosity,
Hmm.
but as a tool to express the music. The sounds of the bass clarinet are still being discovered.
Do you feel that
Sounds,
you're discovering those sounds in a lot of the performance that you do?
I am still trying to discover new sounds, but I have to admit that, for instance, the Fernyhough,
Hmm.
um, there's very little sounds with which he uses in his vocabulary for of time and motion study for bass clarinet. There are very few sounds, if any, that are have been recently discovered. Well, he wrote it 40 years ago, this piece. Um, but even if he was writing that music today, I suspect that he wouldn't be looking to discover new sounds. He's using a palette of sounds that he knew at the time, and he's just going with it. He wrote this incredible piece um, that isn't just about the sound.
Do you think we'd be able to play any samples of these pieces on the air just so people could get a sense of what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, you can put anything on for me. I don't care.
Okay, because I've got this, I'm holding this bridge CD in my hand here.
Listen to the three bridges, because there might be stuff that you have in mind there that you're thinking about with this conversation that might exemplify it.
Yeah, I actually really like those bridges. Um, at the past couple days, I've been at the gym listening to your records actually, which is it's a little weird to work out to actually.
Oh, bizarre.
Yeah, maybe I definitely was the only person there. Maybe the only person ever. Um, but yeah, the bridge recordings are really interesting. I like them a lot. What went into the thought with those?
Um, I don't know. I don't know if there was thought.
Are they
There,
they're completely free improvisations?
yeah, there were moments um, in the recording sessions that I was doing with the repertoire that I just wanted to go, okay, let's give me, let me play something.
That's amazing. So you all this repertoire on here, and then the bridge pieces, which actually became, I guess, the title track in a way.
Well,
You literally feel they were bridges between the other pieces you were recording in the session, or.
the idea of bridge for me, anyway, aside from myself having a fetish about bridges
Mm-hmm.
and their architectural design, I just love them. Um, are kind of metaphors for me of my life that I of all of my activity all of my activities are bridged
Mm-hmm.
by me, I guess, but that the bridges themselves become an entity unto themselves. Okay, I'll put it in another way. You have one bit of land and you have another bit of land, and you connect them with a bridge. Both bits of land are entities, and the bridge itself is an entity. But the three things together becomes another entity.
Hmm.
That entity, or all of those entities, are a metaphor of my music.
So the bridge is traveling between two places, but it's still a place in itself.
Yeah, yeah, and they're they're inspired by, they're influenced by. I can't cut out any of that. I'm touching both sides. I'm touching everything I've ever done. I'm not going to. I want to show that. And what does it look like? This is what it looks like right now, today, in this moment. I often do that in a solo concert. Um, is of repertoire is that I will improvise at the end a kind of a synopsis of what just happened. It's kind of for myself, but I really feel it. I'm giving it out to the audience as a, okay, get rid of the music stand, get rid of all past ideas. Here we are all now together right now in this moment. Listen.
Do you feel that removing the music stand somehow breaks down a barrier between you and the audience?
No, no, although you know, I wish I didn't have to have a music stand, but I can't play this music from heart yet.
Yeah. So speaking of bridge, I'm excited to say that right now I'm holding a signed copy of this in my hand. This will be the giveaway for this week on the podcast. Is there anything you'd like to say to the person who wins this record?
Enjoy. Have fun with it. Play bridge.
Use it at the gym.
Yeah, all right. Workouts. No, it was. I have to say that it was a big pleasure putting that together. It is my last audio recording that I made in a studio, and before the next one, which will be sometime in the fall. I'm going into the studio with this Excess tour, the program from the Excess tour, and no, Bridge is a. I love it. I love the music on it.
So you're really fond of this work, but it's funny because I recall you saying that you felt the studio was a little bit confining, but this one you managed to open up more, or
Well, as I just said, I love the music on it.
so it's the music itself that interesting.
What else is there?
Yeah, yeah. So it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you today, Lori. I think you have some really amazing insights into new music and improvisation. And is there anything else you'd like to add? Do you feel we didn't touch on?
I think it would be really important to also add that, uh, for, yes, this concert is really important for clarinet players and musicians exploring new paths.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say, and that includes composers. Composers
Uh,
are musicians, right? I think and it's funny actually with this kind of concert. More often, composers come than performers,
mm-hmm.
unless they're clarinet players. But I just think I think that the program has something in it for a lot of people. And if it's not up to, and if it's not everybody's cup of tea, I want to hear about that too.
So listeners can find you online on your website, your YouTube channel. Have you got a Facebook page or anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, I do actually. The Facebook page for the Virtuosity of Excess tour is up and running and looking for you all to befriend it because that's the way the word gets out, obviously. So it's called the Virtuosity of Excess tour, Laurie Freedman, and it'd be fantastic if you went there. And it's been, I think it's been about a week since I posted last, and I've been a bit under the weather, and now I'm coming up. So look out. Please go to that Facebook page. It would be fantastic.
And I will definitely be sharing the link to the Virtuosity of Excess tour on the website.
Fantastic.
Sorry, the Facebook page as well, and we can have that there. Um, is there people can purchase your recordings directly from you, Amazon? Where else can they find your material?
You know, this is really a bad situation. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'll say I did find some. I know this is not the ideal way for artists, and I feel almost badly, but I did find some on Spotify, so you can find it there.
Okay. There is
iTunes.
Actuel CD, I think, also sells most of them.
Yeah, I
I,
would strongly encourage people to support purchasing the physical discs for sure.
and
Um,
yeah,
and
and
I'll put some links to some of these on the website as well.
yeah, and certainly at my concerts, I'll be selling off stage and trying to get rid of as much paraphernalia as possible.
Are you selling anything additional to the CDs, like DVDs, videos?
Actually, not. I'm
Oh,
only
okay.
traveling. I have so much to travel with, Sean.
Yeah, I know. I can't imagine. So,
And I have a tour manager also who is traveling with me, but it's still, I can't take anything else. I did have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful T-shirt made, but only 6 T-shirts of the Virtuosity of Excess tour with all the dates, and on the back it says "Ask the tour manager."
I saw that actually
Yeah,
on the Facebook page there.
and they're not meant for selling,
Hmm.
but I'm a bit hard pressed to figure out, well, who gets these? You know,
Yeah.
I gave it to the person who designed the logo, the Virtuosity of Excess, which is so beautiful. Becky Kanak is her name, and I just thought she did a fantastic job. But I don't know who to give 5 other. Well, the tour manager gets one, and the back of her T-shirt says "tour manager." Yeah, but
Well, that's how people find. So all the other ones say ask the tour manager, and then she's the one who gets asked.
that's right, because I don't want to field any of those questions.
That's good planning on your part,
Yeah, well,
for sure. Great. Well, I could think of a way to get rid of at least one more shirt for you if you need, so just keep me posted.
Sean, you got it.
What's that?
You got it.
We could give one away on here as well?
Oh, I was thinking for you.
Oh, yeah, I'd love one for myself. Yeah, well, I could think of a way to get rid of 2 then for you if you want. So just let me know. We'll talk when you're in Calgary here
Okay.
about that. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Laurie. And I can't wait to watch your concerts in Calgary. And I'm envious of the guests who get to come all over the continent. So
Well, it's
thanks
been
for.
great talking with you, and I hope this reaches interested ears.
Well, I'm sure it will.
Hmm.
Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Bye, Sean.
If you find that you're enjoying the podcast, please see the website at clarinet.com. There you'll find the store, the subscription links for iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, etc., and also the social media pages. And if you're interested in winning the product mentioned on the podcast, that's where you have to go and make sure that you like at least one of those pages. You can have up to 5 chances to win. Today, Laurie had contacted me and mentioned something she sort of thought of after the interview regarding teaching and interpreting music, and I just wanted to quickly include that here. It was too valuable to not include in today's podcast. So I'll let her have the last word, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
I don't really have a methodology because each musician who comes to me has very potentially different aspects and issues to address, and I like to stay personal with those aspects. But there does seem to be one very basic theme that seems to run through my lessons, my teachings, and it comes back to me from comments of students that whatever, the most important thing I believe is that one be themselves in the music. It's so important to identify one's own personality in music, but not just in music, generally, in life. And to find that personality and run with that and play with that and live that in the music. If you're not yourself in that music, I'm afraid of you, the student, joining the masses of very unhappy musicians in the Western world, and that would be a really big loss. So a lot of my time spent with students is trying to figure out what is the issue and showing different approaches to solving those issues, but never saying this is what you need to do. I really insist on the student discovering for themselves what is best and what is most efficient. They're the only people who can help themselves. My job, I feel, as a teacher, is really to share my experience and to impart on a very huge gift that I had been given, which is to learn and to love learning and to learn how to learn.